Comments like we just heard Zola make aren't only isolated to audition settings. We also see body policing coming from a place of misogyny. More often than not, men are the perpetrators of body shaming in the opera industry. For example, in a recent production of Der Rosenkavalier, many male critics commented on Tara Erat's Octavian, calling her a chubby bundle of puppy fat and dumpy in stature, all while pointing out that her voice and dramatic interpretation was glorious. And while male critics policing women's bodies is not a new thing, it brings up the conversation of the role of appearance in theatrical settings. What matters more, appearances or the music? This seems to be a popular debate, but I don't think it's so black and white. Of course I want to see an opera that is a visual experience. Fun costumes, great acting, intricate and unique stage sets, and characters that I can relate to. I want all of it. The music and theatrical setting go hand in hand with one another, and that's what makes opera so special. These men that we just heard from are doing their due diligence in upholding our society's rigid beauty standards. I personally want to be a part of the conversation that changes this narrative, and I hope you do too. I want to see more plus-size bodies representing the main love interest in operas. It's as if opera casting directors are deluded into believing that fat people don't have love lives or can't be the objects of admiration. This simply isn't true. I know from experience. And it all goes back to these gatekeepers mostly being part of a generation of normalized fatphobia. So I want to take a quick second to speak to those in favor of the kind of body policing we heard from Zola before we move on to possible solutions to these issues. If you are listening to this and you thought to yourself that the comments that we heard from Diane Zola came from a place of caring, I hear you. I really do. But oftentimes, this sense of caring comes from a lot of assumptions being made about fat people. And I encourage you to question this logic of, but they're unhealthy, so it's justified. Really ask yourself, is someone else's health really any of your business? Is it anyone's place to tell someone to lose weight if they are not their doctor? Should singers have a space on their resumes for the diseases that they struggle with? A logical person would say no, of course not. I think people like Diane Zola make a lot of assumptions about the lifestyle of people that look like me. And in a society that tells us small is good, big is bad, it makes sense why these assumptions are present. But I believe that health is a morally neutral thing. I wouldn't look at a stranger on the street that was smoking a cigarette and automatically think that they're a bad or lazy person. I don't know them. In my opinion, what makes someone a good person is how they treat others and whether they live their life in a compassionate and empathetic way. And in that same vein, what makes an opera singer good is their voice and their dramatic interpretation, not the vessel from which it comes. Now, do I think that health should be a topic of discussion for singers? Yes, absolutely. Our bodies are our moneymakers. But if you believe that these topics of health should exclusively be directed towards people in fat bodies, you, my friend, are probably fatphobic. If you really want people to be their happiest, healthiest selves, fostering an environment of exclusion and shame is not the way to do it. Shame leads to things like eating disorders and bad mental health. And most of us know that bad mental health leads to bad physical health. I am an advocate for bodily autonomy. What you do with your body is none of my business, whether that be to lose weight, gain weight, or anything else, and whether those decisions are made for aesthetic reasons or health reasons. I don't care. But people like the critics we heard before would like people, especially women, to change their appearance to fit into the box of what they believe to be beautiful. We all know that beauty is subjective. If we all lived in accordance with the typical beauty standard, we'd all look the same, and that would be so fucking boring. And if you're listening to this podcast, there's a good chance that you're sexy as fuck. I'm actually kind of blushing a little bit because you're looking fine as hell today. Ooh. Now that we got all of that out of the way, what are the solutions? I think the first one is pretty obvious and may come off a little harsh, but I'm just going to say it because everyone's thinking it. We could just sit around and wait for the generation of problematic individuals to retire and depend on the up-and-coming generation of classical musicians to foster a more inclusive environment. Sure, this could work. But what if our new gatekeepers keep up with the same unspoken patterns of fatphobia? I think the more logical solution is to have these hard conversations now. Respectfully call out your colleagues and mentors if you see problematic patterns repeating. This doesn't just have to be for fatphobia. This can be for racism, transphobia, and all the other problematic issues ingrained in the opera tradition. We all have a responsibility to keep the operatic art form alive, and we can't do that if we continue on the path of exclusion. The opera world is missing out on some incredible voices because of fatphobic gatekeepers. I don't want it to be a newsworthy event when we have a fat woman playing Carmen. I want it to be normal. Let's stop waiting around for others to make these changes we want to see. Let's reinvent the box they're trying to shove singers into. Let's all be the change we want to see and not wait around for permission to do so. And for all my plus-size listeners, in case no one's told you yet, you have permission to take up space. Your value is not in how you are perceived by others. It is in how you treat yourself and those around you. And your voice is meant to be heard. I want to hear your thoughts. Feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at Classical Music on Mushrooms. Thank you so much for listening. Be kind to everyone, spread light, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of the day.